Hi everyone, it's Maria from J'adore le papier. It's been about 1 year, but I'm still here and I'm actually staying at a friend's house. It was inspired by Ira of Meditative Scrapbooking, where she has one called Gratitude, and it had the most beautiful specimens. But because I want my friend to be able to take this outside or add specimens to it, it's actually an eco dye or eco print to fabric of her dahlias from her garden. So everything in this journal is actually from her garden. Piece of artwork that I originally wanted. It's some jelly printing of actual plants. I tried to do a good job, but it's my first time. I was actually watching some videos of Magdalena. She's from Fat Pickle Studio. She has the most amazing eco dye, jelly printing, sketching, teak. It originated in the 1600s, but I think this is from the 1800s France, after the Italians taught the French how to make the lace. This is removable, so when she opens it up, it's actually acting as a faux vase. It's very casual. All of the denim and linens are from two ladies in France. The first one is from Aline. She's Antique Textile Shop, and you can find her on Instagram. And of course, Mia from A Brown Paper Parcel. She provided me all of the flax linens that you'll see in here. And then the leathers are just remnants, scraps. I bought a pound of scraps from somebody, and I really wanted this journal to mimic my artist roll or chef roll, because you'll have this leather pocket that's actually functional. Pretty fat. It's one signature. And here's the side. I wanted another piece of leather on the side. Again, because if she takes this outside and she has muddy hands like I usually do, even if I'm wearing gloves, I wanted her to have some stability and also just to keep the fabrics a little cleaner. She can just replace this, move that out of the way, and here's the alternate cover. So if it's staying inside on a bookshelf, there's actually a little pin right here, and she can attach any type of ribbon. This is some velvet that I'll give to her. So here's a closer look at that eco dye. My very first time. I usually just buy it because it's a tough process, but these dahlias are pretty amazing. Inside lining I kept free of pockets. Susie, you can add pockets to it. It's pretty raggedly sewn together. It's actually by machine and hand stitched. The reason being is because I had quite a few different measured pieces of denim and linens from Aline. And so I just kind of made a patchwork out of it and tried to fit as much. But this liner inside is one piece. So even when you look at the back, you'll notice that I had to cobble or create a patchwork of different fabrics and leather. For all seasons, even though I didn't really start picking until summer, all seasons are represented here. This is just some of my early attempts of eco dyeing. Didn't go very well, but some of the plants stayed on this antique paper, so I thought it would just be a pretty little remnant. And we have antique ledger pages from Ina at Exquisite Memory Books, and these are the only modern papers here. These are just grid papers that I like to write on. You'll see digitals from Anja over at A Whimsical Adventure. You'll see digitals from Heather at Ruby and Pearl XO. Stamps over at A Whimsical Adventure. And then some old book pages, antique die cuts from England. And I did some gessoing, especially on the book pages, just in case Susie wants to do some writing. And any stains that you see that are meant to mimic the mud that I usually have on my hands when I'm gardening were just created by Distress Inks. And I just have a antique postcard from France, and I love the hairstyle. Kind of reminds me of Susie. I do have a few pressed plants for her that I haven't placed yet. Again, everything's from her garden, but I just wanted her to have an idea and places for her to be able to do her layouts here. So a lot of antique letters or antique receipts from France mostly. Diary pages from the Grand Magasin du Louvre diary that I got from Ina. And this here is actually a seed packet that I made out of a vintage English ledger page and some of my early jelly printing attempts of all the wildflowers that are in her garden. And this was one of the decent ones, and that's just there. Hopefully they'll actually turn out okay. And then here are some book pages from the soft book cover that I actually took. It's called Sketching in Wildlife. And I'll have a few modern pieces in here that actually are from a road trip that we took together, so you'll recognize this paper, Susie, here. And then a lot of antique pieces that she can use to layer behind any pressed flowers that she wants to add. And some of the antique receipts that I got from both Ina and also Sarah at Crafty Paper Bits. So I love printing to wallpaper because the backside is actually so absorbent for some reason. But I just love the little pop of color. You'll notice the book is mostly blues and browns and khaki because blues are Susie's favorite color. And I had enough blue fabric to be able to cover such a large journal. This journal is actually 10 inches wide by 12 inches tall. Specimens yet, it's actually pretty thick already. Some antique envelopes where she can stuff notes or again do some layering. So she could just add, any of her specimens anywhere in her garden. And so I just left them and then I just attempted to fussy cut them a little bit and did some stitching on the pages to mimic some of their stems. All the blue ledger is from England, and that's what I made that seed envelope out of. And then a lot of antique papers for her to be able to scrap and layer with or take notes. So you have this Russian children's school book page that actually comes from one of the journals I got a couple years ago from Ira. Antique book pages. This is a sample layout. I got this from a book in Nice, and then this actually came from Sarah, Crafty Paper Bits, part of the Happy Mail that she sent me. And I just love the blue stamps. Add her pressed or dried flowers. And this just flaps open and this keeps it together like this. And some antique advertisements from a Femina magazine circa 1910, I think. Diary book pages, French book pages for more writing. This was an attempt at more of that jelly printing, and I didn't like how it turned out as well, so I just gessoed it a little bit. If I saw spots that looked like flowers to me, I would just actually sketch around them. This one's a little bright, but this was an attempt on watercolor paper to do some brusho painting, because I was watching, Liesl Heinzel, her channel, I'll link her below, and she has this amazing tutorial on how to use brusho with molding paste and just how to create art in your book pages. Adele's tried to do a little bit of linen fabric layering on there. And then this bright green spot, I just gessoed over it. There were some failed attempts at some jelly printing on the back, but I tried to document what I was attempting to do for her. Very, very messily layered, but I wanted it that way. This is probably one of my more casual journals, if not most casual. This vintage or antique postcard, I actually got it from a Happy Mail from Heather at Ruby and Pearl XO. I think 2 or 3 years now, Heather, but I thought it was a perfect sentiment, a friend. Jelly printing, I actually liked how some of the jelly printing was faded the more I would lift off of the jelly pad. So I just tore up the pages for her to create specimen cards or note cards for her throughout. Onion pages are from a ledger book that I got from England a few years back, and I just love the blue note-taking here. And this is an example of just some craft paper layered with antique French payment documents. You'll notice that I used some Butterick, or what do you call these? What do you call these? Sewing patterns, I guess. These are actually from her childhood. So her mom actually sewed her some of these clothes, her and her brother. So I use those to just kind of layer onto the pages. Just a little something whimsical. I needed it to just have a silhouette. That's actually a weed. And then a couple of leaves from her trees out back. And then an ad, French ad. Looks like Susie's hair. Ephemera, again from Heather. She had this cute little cigarette case box, and she filled with perfectly blue ephemera, so I'm finally using them. An antique French embroidery pattern here, where they already traced it, and I think that might be a squirrel, my arch nemesis in the garden. Some empty spots for her to journal or add her specimens to. And then this is a digital, my new favorite from Heather, Ruby and Pearl XO. It's a William Morris Antique Wallpapers collection. It adds some magazine pages from ideas that I was sending her as I was redoing her front yard for her. This pocket is the front of that book page that Donna Morgan gave me. And so you can see that there's the purple original front cover that I copied onto wallpaper with some more antique ledger script writing, a postcard from one of our road trips this summer. And then throughout the journal, I actually added some of the plant tags that I put into her garden this year. So we're now into summer. You'll notice I did a little sketching. Thank you, Seraph. This is perfect art, is not what you see, but what you make others see. Plant that I added in her shade garden this year, a Brunnera, Alexander's Great. And then these French pages actually come from Antique Textile Shop, Aline. She sent me some pages that were torn. She thought I might be able to use them, and I definitely can, because I love this book. I really wanted to be black and white and blue and brown. So I just mended it with a little bit of vintage ledger. This here is just a little bit of cooking or parchment paper with a wax from Heather, Ruby and Pearl. I'm finally using that beautiful blue wax. Inside is actually a book page of this, I don't know if Count Lafayette, I'm not sure. I forgot to look up his history. And then one of the botanicals from Heather's, which one is it called? I think it's not William, it's the Antique Botanicals kit from Ruby and Pearl XO. And those were the original botanicals I wanted in here until I realized that maybe I would actually add Susie's Real botanicals. So it's just a place for her to journal and magazine pages onto the ledgers. And this one comes from Heather's, her golden dress, I believe, new kit. And then an Edith Holden French book page of the wildflowers that are in Susie's garden. And this little pocket has this little trading card of, who is that? It comes from Kay's Vintage Ephemera. It's British. And then some labels in here. So if she wants to tag some of her specimens, she can just add that onto different pages. And a couple more blank tags for any specimen labeling. So more Grand Magasin du Louvre book pages, diary pages. And then this is an antique ledger page. It's so soft. It's my softest and probably the last few pages of it from this ledger book that I have. And I printed the William Morris prints on there. It's actually double-sided. And I just love how these colors pop when you print to antique papers or wallpapers. And then behind that is just a jelly print of one of the Grassweeds telephone book, the big giant yellow one. If you watch Ina's journal videos, she has that giant yellow telephone book. So those are a couple pages from there. And this is also from Ina. It's an 1889 ledger page, a little bit. And then one of the limelights that I put in her garden this year. I put 2 in there for you, Susie. And then this actually comes from her hydrangea that I tried to keep alive this year. I think it's Endless Summer. To write trading cards. These are actually Dutch trading cards of a photography studio. There's 2. These are hornets and then an aquarium. Belly band full of antique postcard or picture frames that she can add layers of flowers to. Lots of material for her to write. Cover sketching outdoors in all seasons. I just made a copy of the cover page, but I like the sketches. I love this fountain. I actually just put a new fountain in her backyard this season, and it looks very much like that. Some more of the pattern from her childhood clothing. Femina, that's part of the Femina magazine page that you'll see later. Actually, I tried printing one of the antique botanicals from Ruby and Pearl XO. to this parchment paper, and it was very faded, and I just kind of like that actually, especially if you layer it on top of a specimen. Running of this flower, and it created that silhouette, so I actually just put that in there, but she doesn't have to keep this since it's a little bit bulky. And then some of the embossed scraps that Heather shared in her happy mail to me is right here. But this comes off. It's just a book page of a wheelbarrow. Did some decoupaging of some tissue paper from Donna Morgan. French Edith Holden book page with a couple more plants. I put in some Still Before You in your shade garden. And then on the sunny side garden, a lot of Black-Eyed Susan and or other types of Rudbeckia. Some stationery for her. I love these antique Chinese jars. And of course, our favorite cream paper. This is also from Aline Antique Textile Shop. This is actually the backside of that fabric. So there's the brighter blue. This is a jelly print. I was just lifting some of the paint off of there, hoping to get a silhouette of the flower that was in the middle. It didn't work out. I used one of the antique ledger pages from Sarah Crafty Paper Bits. When I look at the clouds, I can see flowers or different images. So I put some of the flowers from her garden in here, like the blue grape hyacinth. She doesn't have any lavender, but I think it would be really pretty. She does have a million dandelions, though. I love weeding. Butterfly bushes, she has 3 or 4. This one was, I have a little bit of a butterfly in the background there. And then she has these giant orange poppies that are so amazing, and I was able to save them during construction out front. So they're still there. And then I put some new pansies out front as well. Embroidery paper from the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s of a little girl. I don't know if you could see that. And then this is a little prayer card from her mom's stash. Just love the 2 little girls, like sisters. But she's from Ireland. Magdalena's living in Ireland. So I just wanted Susie to have a little bit of that. I know she loves England, and I think she plans to visit Ireland one day soon. Direct trading cards from Kay's Vintage Ephemera of some English aristocrat ladies. I just love, again, the blues and the browns throughout the journal. An antique tuck right up here with a little pin and rose button from Heather's little gift to me a couple of years ago. A couple of scraps, and I did add some ferns to her shade garden, a fencing company that didn't make the fence, but one of them, and then just some layering pieces. I think there might be a label in there. Oh, here it is. Champagne label. Add some eco jelly printing, but it is a silhouette of a few leaves, so I just left it in there. She could actually scrap that if she wants. French menu, because she loves to have little gatherings outside from 1922, and then just some extra specimen cards that I printed to Antique Ledger from Ina, in case she wants to label a few flowers she's adding. And then this was the Butterick pattern of the patterns that I actually decoupaged here. Her little skirt, it's actually kind of cute. You can wear that in the garden and put your tools right in your pockets. There's the other side of the Femina magazine right here. Fancy ladies and how they use flowers in their fashion designs. And look at that hairstyle. That's amazing. And then just some layering pieces again, so that she can just, add her pressed flowers. I have pressed flowers in the back for her. And I just kept them in this paper here. Her Cosmos didn't come up this year, but I managed to save one. One little Cosmo came up, Susie. One Cosmo. Okay, I'm going to go faster now. It's basically the same throughout. More jelly printing, silhouettes, and fabrics. Antique French postcard. It's Susie's little boyfriend. He's so cute, and I love how the pinks pop off of this William Morris antique textile or wallpaper image. I printed this to a lighter weight watercolor paper, and I forced it through my printer. 1989 ledger, French ledger, so beautiful. Then in the back here you see peeking are petals from her hydrangea Endless Summer, but this page actually was originally just all eco printing or eco dyeing onto watercolor paper. A Crocosmia, Emily Mackenzie, some geranium, and other grasses. It didn't turn out so well, so I went ahead and just decoupaged a few of the dried petals from the Endless Summer on here. Then there's that wallpaper that I got from Donna Morgan, just to back it, but that's when I started playing with the William Morris printing, and the images just come out so beautiful. Got Magasin du Louvre label from the dandelion chocolate cake that she got me to celebrate finishing her front yard. Actually, I'm not done yet because I have to do some mulching in 30-degree weather today. Dandelions all throughout her garden, my favorite. Edith Holden French book page, a bookmark that Donna Morgan gifted me over a year ago now, and it's just perfect. All the colors, the garden colors. Coin pocket, again, more blank pages of Khadi paper so she can do her own sketching. And this is when I was playing with a bouquet that I pulled from her garden, and I was trying to capture the purples. I wasn't doing so well. They kept turning out a little more mauve or maroon, almost like my wine colors. So I'm still practicing how to mix. And I'm not sure what this flower is, but it was blooming actually late fall. So it's more towards the fall section of the book. But it had the most brilliant oranges and amber. I put in her hydrangea out front and some doodles. More William Morris wallpaper. And this is actually a specimen from one of her butterfly bushes. It's the hot pink one, Susie. And it's just backed with some of this French linen. You can actually take this out by undoing the label. France. She actually has a maple tree out front that I'm battling the leaves and the seeds on. Some remnants, tabs, French linens from Miab, and some of my failed eco dyeing. So I just went ahead and sketched in some papers. Just a rose garden stamps, and I love how I chose the faded antique looking ones. And I printed it to this antique receipt, textile receipt tannery that I got from Ina. And I love the stamps that are still on there. And then in the back, I just put this antique book page LM from a phone book, just because I love how soft it is. From when I was designing her front yard for her. I just wanted her to have those so she could laugh at them one day. But I think the front yard turned out okay. Not bad. Some more labels throughout the journal just so that she can add her own specimens. And now we're into fall. So this section here with a photo with this tree is autumn. I forgot to say that out loud. And then some of my failed jelly prints. This one actually did have a nice silhouette. So I went ahead and just sketched in some of the flowers that were meant to be there, like the pansy. And this one almost looks like a lily, but it wasn't. I don't remember what it was. And then I used various markers in here just to kind of sketch in some of the images that should have been transferred. The paper printing that I was doing on with some of Ruby's digitals. And this is another William Morris, but I think this one also comes from a golden dress. So since we're into fall, just wanted to add some orange colors and reds and maroons. And again, some little sketches of orange poppies that I put down here in pencil. And then some beads from Heather, the gift that you gave me a couple years. Pages. There's the back part of the embroidery pattern. This actually looks like charcoal, but it is jelly print using acrylic on antique ledger paper. But I just love how it looks like charcoal or a pencil sketch. But those were some of the grass weeds that I had pulled. And then antique, or no, 1923? Yeah, 1923. We're 99 years ago. A receipt that I printed some of Anja's Rose Garden stamps too. And I love the blue typeset. And then on the back, I actually printed the Rose Garden from also the same kit from Anja on the back so that Susie can plan her next rose garden or backyard. And then this comes from Heather, Ruby and Pearl, two friends again. It's just perfect because they're out in the garden, out in the woods, talking about their next garden project. This comes from one of Heather's kits. It might have been the French letters, but I had it printed on laser to tracing paper, and somehow the tracing paper with the ink came out waxy. It almost feels like wax paper. So I went ahead and kept it because they did a really good job. And then I just added a French stamp over the original stamp that was printed there in the journal. And then this dream list here comes from a magazine, and this is a picture of her dream backyard English garden, cottage garden. So I just left that in there for her to remember her backyard planning. Some stamps. Now we're into winter, so this brown tab here, Susie is winter. Winter owl. More pages from the diary, French diaries. Sample layout using some old book pages, my attempt at layering and doing an antique book page cover that I sewed a French book page onto. And you can actually swap this out. This was, I'm not sure what kind of wildflower that was, but they were purple petals and they're all gone. They disappeared. Anyway, and some more paper tucked in and more layering pieces for her. Antique playing cards. I forget what game that was. And then just attempts of my sketching and watercolor samples that I just ended up sketching over because I didn't like how the greens turned out. But she has some winter crocus that are starting to pop up now, some of the greenery, and then some of the purple pansies that I added aren't purple because when you try to paint over green, it turns out into mud color. Art piece of paper is from Donna Morgan. She gifted me a couple years ago. I just love the hot iron because I did use a hot iron to do some of my eco printing throughout this journal. And then this is a specimen. I'm not sure what flower that is, Susie, so you're just going to have to take one of the labels I gave you and document that, or just document it right here. But look at the back. Oh, and then I printed some of Anja's rose garden images to the back just because I love the old dictionary page writing from French billet doux. That's, I think, my last piece there, but I just used it as a tuck. Oh, and this comes from this bag actually came from our road trip this summer. And then I started watercoloring some of the orange poppies that are out in Susie's garden because they're my favorite. Poppies are just my favorite, orange or red ones from the south of France. But this Junk Girls was one of our favorite shops. So I just threw in some rice papers for her to layer with. And then this was one of the eco prints from the Dahlia on watercolor paper. Paper with purple flowers from one of Ruby and Pearl Exo's digital kits. And then you can see it did eco dye all the way to the back. And then just some receipts. So French book pages, antique French Happy New Year postcard that I added to one of the postcard holders that I got from Sarah. And then a winter book page. In a garden in 32-degree weather before Old Man Winter, so I have to lay out some mulch and compost today just to cover a lot of the flowers. Their Happy New Year antique postcard right there, and antique French receipt. I just love 1913, their script writing. Or book page. Oh, extra stamps, Susie, in case you want to layer some of your images. French wine labels. And then this is the other part of the antique embroidery patterns. I tucked in, a couple of failed eco prints of your dahlias, but I do love the color that they gave. So that's just tucked in back, and some of your wallpaper, not wallpaper, but wrapping paper of dahlias. So that actually went perfectly color-wise. Extra fabric for you to layer with, some of the samples of arbors that we had for you this summer. And then here's your little envelope. This book page, or this ledger page, is actually a giant ledger page. And it feels like it has, I don't know, cotton in it. It's so thick. And the beautiful part about it is on the back, oops, my little crocosmia seeds are starting to pop out. Someone had sketched on it, and these look like your flower bed, Susie. Maybe two more than you have, but I thought you could sketch your backyard and document what you have in your backyard flower bed wise. Scrapbooking paper from Sarah, Crafty Paper Bits, I thought was the perfect blue for you. So there we are at the end of the journal. And again, you can add your own pockets. There's the back. And I hope you fill her even fatter, because she can take it. She could probably take at least another ½ inch of specimens. Through a little long, I'm out of practice, but I hope that I can actually start making more journals this winter season.